Marcus Webb had learned to move through airports the way water moves around stones. Fluid, practiced, unbothered by the chaos that sent other travelers into spirals of anxiety. At 34, with a 6-year-old daughter whose hand fit perfectly in his, he'd mastered the art of navigating security lines, gate changes, and delayed flights with the quiet competence of a man who'd been doing this alone for 3 years. The Houston George Bush Intercontinental Airport hummed around them on this Friday evening in late September. The air thick with jet fuel, overpriced coffee, and the particular tension that comes when thousands of people are suspended between where they've been and where they're going. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. Daddy, can we get pretzels? Lily asked, her voice carrying that musical quality that still caught him off guard sometimes. The way she could sound so much like her mother, even though Sarah had been gone since Lily was 3. The tumor had been aggressive. The ending had been quick. And Marcus had been left with a mortgage, a mountain of medical debt, and a little girl who asked why Mommy wasn't coming home anymore. After we checked the gate, baby, Marcus said, adjusting the backpack on his shoulder. Inside were coloring books, sanitizing wipes, 3 different snacks he'd already packed, Lily's stuffed elephant named Peanut, and his work laptop that he'd probably need to open during the flight to Denver. His boss, Richard Chun, had been understanding about Marcus leaving early on Friday, but understanding only stretched so far when you were the lead mechanical engineer on a project that was already 2 weeks behind schedule. They walked past Gate 17, where a group of college students sprawled across seats like they owned the place, and Gate 18, where an elderly couple sat holding hands with the patient stillness of people who'd been together so long they'd learned to exist in comfortable silence. Marcus checked his phone. Their flight to Denver was on time, departing from Gate 22 at 7:15 p.m. They had 40 minutes. Plenty of time for pretzels. That's when he heard it. Not the usual airport sounds. The rolling of suitcase wheels, the tinny announcements over intercoms, the beeping of those golf carts that transported passengers who couldn't walk long distances. This was something different, softer, more broken. Someone was crying. Marcus slowed his pace, his engineer's mind automatically trying to locate the source of the sound. Gate 19 was nearly empty, just a few passengers scattered around waiting for a flight to Phoenix. Gate 20 had a crowd, but they were all focused on their phones or books. And then he saw her. She was sitting in Gate 21, in the far corner near the massive windows that looked out onto the tarmac where planes taxied like enormous metal birds. She'd wedged herself into the last seat in the row, her knees pulled up to her chest despite wearing what looked like an incredibly expensive white dress. Not a wedding dress, exactly, but close enough that it sent a clear message. The fabric was silk, maybe, or something that caught the fluorescent light and turned it into something softer. Her dark hair, which had probably been styled elaborately at some point, now fell in messy waves around her shoulders. Her face was buried in her hands, and her whole body shook with the kind of crying that comes from somewhere deep, the kind that Marcus recognized because he'd done it himself in the months after Sarah died, always in the shower where Lily couldn't hear him. Daddy! Lily tugged his hand. Why is that lady sad? Marcus hesitated. Every instinct he'd developed as a single father told him to keep walking. Don't get involved. Don't complicate an already complicated day. They had a flight to catch, a weekend in Denver with Sarah's parents who barely tolerated him anymore, and approximately 17 things that could go wrong between here and their destination. But he'd been raised by a mother who'd worked as a nurse for 40 years, who'd taught him that when you see someone hurting, you don't just walk past. You stop. You ask if they're okay, even if they're not, even if there's nothing you can do. You acknowledge their pain instead of pretending it doesn't exist. Stay right here, baby, Marcus said, guiding Lily to a seat a few feet away. Don't move, okay? I'm gonna check on that lady. Is she lost? Lily asked, her brown eyes, Sarah's eyes, wide with concern. I don't know. I'm going to find out. Marcus approached slowly, the way you approach a wounded animal that might bolt or bite. When he was close enough that his shadow fell across her, he stopped. Hey, he said quietly, are you okay? It was a stupid question. Obviously she wasn't okay. But sometimes stupid questions are the ones that give people permission to admit they're not fine, that they need help, that they can't do this alone. The woman's head snapped up, and Marcus found himself looking into eyes that were an unusual shade of gray-green, like the Gulf of Mexico on an overcast day. Her makeup, which had probably been professionally applied, was now smeared across her cheeks in dark streaks. There was a small cut on her lower lip, as if she'd been biting it. And there was something in her expression, fear, maybe, or exhaustion, or both, that made his chest tighten. "I'm fine," she said automatically, her voice hoarse. Then she laughed, a sound with no humor in it. "I'm clearly not fine, but I will be. You don't have to. I'm okay." "You're sitting alone in an airport crying in what looks like a wedding dress," Marcus said, not unkindly. "I'm going to go out on a limb and say you're not okay." She looked down at her dress as if she'd forgotten she was wearing it. "It's not a wedding dress," she said. "It's a rehearsal dinner dress. The wedding was tomorrow, at 2 in the afternoon, at the St. Regis in Atlanta. 300 guests, orchestra, ice sculptures shaped like swans, a cake that cost more than most people's cars." She laughed again, that same broken sound. "I got as far as the airport before I realized I couldn't get on the plane back home. I couldn't do it. I couldn't marry him." Marcus sat down in the seat next to her, leaving one empty seat between them as a buffer. "What's your name? Does it matter?" she asked. "Probably not," Marcus admitted. "But I'm Marcus. That's my daughter, Lily, over there. She's 6. We're supposed to be on a flight to Denver in about 35 minutes. But I couldn't walk past someone who looked like they were having the worst day of their life without at least asking if you needed anything." The woman stared at him for a long moment, as if trying to figure out whether he was real or some kind of hallucination brought on by stress and dehydration. "Victoria," she finally said. "My name is Victoria." "Nice to meet you, Victoria," Marcus said. "Do you have a flight booked? Somewhere you're trying to go?" "No," she said. "I don't know. I ran. I left the hotel where we were staying, got in a taxi, told him to take me to the airport. I didn't have a plan. I just knew I couldn't stay there. I couldn't stand in front of all those people tomorrow and promise to love someone I don't even like anymore." Her voice cracked on the last word. "God, I sound insane." "You sound like someone who just made a really hard decision," Marcus said. "That's not insane. That's brave." Victoria turned to look at him fully then, her eyes searching his face as if looking for the catch, the angle, the reason why a stranger would stop to talk to her. "You don't know me," she said. "You don't know what I'm running from. Maybe I'm making the biggest mistake of my life." "Maybe," Marcus agreed. "Or maybe you're saving yourself from making an even bigger one. I don't know you, you're right. But I know what regret looks like, and I know what grief looks like. And right now you look like someone who's grieving something that hasn't even happened yet. That tells me your gut is trying to tell you something important." "My gut," Victoria said, and this time her laugh had a tiny edge of genuine amusement in it. "My mother would have a stroke if she heard someone suggest I should listen to my gut instead of the family advisors, the wedding planner, and the 3 therapists she hired to make sure I was mentally prepared for the transition into married life." She wiped at her face with the back of her hand, smearing her mascara even more. "I must look like a disaster." "You look like someone who's having a really hard day," Marcus said. "There's a difference." Lily appeared at his elbow then, having apparently decided that staying put was negotiable. "Daddy, is the lady okay now?" Victoria looked at Lily, and something in her face softened. "I'm getting there," she said. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Lily Marie Webb," Lily announced, as if she were introducing herself to royalty. "I'm 6 3/4. We're going to Denver to visit my grandparents, but I don't really like going there because Grandma cries a lot and Grandpa doesn't talk to Daddy very much." "Lily," Marcus said, a warning note in his voice. "It's true," Lily said, undeterred. "You said we should always tell the truth." Victoria's lips twitched into something that almost resembled a smile. "Your daddy's right about that," she said. She looked back at Marcus. "Thank you for stopping. You didn't have to do that. Most people wouldn't have. Most people are too wrapped up in their own stuff to notice when someone else is drowning," Marcus said. He stood up, pulling his phone from his pocket to check the time. 28 minutes until boarding. Look, I don't know what your situation is, and I'm not going to pretend I have any advice that's worth a damn. But if you need someone to call, a friend, a family member who's not going to try to talk you into going back, I can stick around for a few more minutes. Make sure you're not sitting here alone. Victoria looked up at him, and for the first time since he'd approached her, she seemed to really see him. Not just a stranger who'd interrupted her breakdown, but a person. A man with kind eyes and rough hands, and a daughter who was now examining Victoria's dress with the fascinated intensity of someone who'd only ever seen fancy clothes in movies. "Your dress is so pretty," Lily said. "Are you a princess?" Victoria's laugh this time was genuine, clear, and bright despite the tears still wet on her face. "No, sweetheart. I'm not a princess. I'm just someone who made some mistakes and is trying to figure out how to fix them. My daddy says everybody makes mistakes," Lily said confidently. "He says what matters is what you do after." Marcus felt his throat tighten. He'd said that to Lily last week after she'd spilled grape juice all over the living room carpet and then tried to clean it up herself, making it worse. He hadn't realized she'd been paying such close attention. "Your daddy sounds like a smart man," Victoria said. "He is," Lily agreed. "He builds things. Big things. Like bridges and buildings and stuff. But not toys. I wish he could build toys." Marcus checked his phone again. 23 minutes. They really needed to start moving toward their gate. But something kept him rooted in place, watching Victoria as she pulled herself together with visible effort, straightening her spine and pushing her hair back from her face. "I need to call someone," Victoria said suddenly, as if the decision had just crystallized in her mind. "Not to go back, but to let them know I'm okay. That I'm not." She stopped, swallowed hard. "My mother is probably losing her mind right now. Half the wedding party is probably out looking for me." "There's a family bathroom down that way," Marcus said, pointing past gate 22. "It's quieter, more private, if you need a minute to make that call." Victoria stood, wobbling slightly on her heels. Marcus noticed for the first time that one of her shoes had a broken strap, held together with what looked like a safety pin. She followed his gaze and let out a long breath. "These cost $800, she said. "Custom made. Dyed to match the bridesmaid dresses. And they broke before I even made it out of the hotel." She kicked them off, leaving them under the seat. "I'm done with things that cost too much and break too easily." She picked up a small clutch purse from the seat beside her, white, embroidered with tiny pearls, and clutched it against her chest like a shield. "Thank you, Marcus. Really, you'll probably never know how much it meant that you stopped." "Good luck," Marcus said. "I hope, whatever you decide to do, I hope it works out." Victoria nodded, then turned to Lily. "It was very nice to meet you, Lily Marie Webb. You take good care of your daddy. Okay? "I will," Lily promised solemnly. They watched Victoria walk away, her bare feet silent on the industrial carpet, her white dress making her stand out among the sea of travelers in jeans and business casual. She moved like someone who was used to being watched, her posture perfect despite everything, her head held high. "Is she going to be okay?" Lily asked. "I don't know, baby," Marcus said honestly. "But I think she's going to try to be." They made their way to gate 22, and Marcus bought the pretzels he'd promised, along with a bottle of water and a coffee for himself that tasted like it had been brewed sometime last week. The gate area was crowded, every seat taken, people standing along the walls with their carry-ons at their feet. Marcus found a spot near the window where Lily could watch the planes and pulled out his phone to text his mother-in-law, Linda, letting her know they'd be landing on time. His phone buzzed with her response almost immediately. "Good. Tom wants to talk to you about Lily's school situation. He thinks you should consider moving back to Denver." Marcus closed his eyes and counted to 10. This was not a new conversation. His father-in-law had been suggesting, insisting, really, that Marcus should move back to Denver ever since Sarah died, arguing that Lily needed to be near family, that Marcus couldn't possibly raise her properly on his own while working full-time, that Houston was too hot and too crowded and too far from everything that mattered. What Tom really meant, Marcus knew, was that he didn't trust Marcus to keep Sarah's memory alive the right way, to make sure Lily knew her mother, to raise her with the same values Sarah had been raised with. Never mind that Marcus had loved Sarah with everything he had. Never mind that he was doing his best every single day to be both mother and father to a little girl who deserved so much more than what life had given her. He typed back, looking forward to talking with Tom, and hit send, even though it was a lie. Flight 2847 to Denver will begin boarding in approximately 10 minutes. The gate agent announced over the intercom. We'll be boarding our first-class passengers, and those needing extra time first. Marcus gathered their things, making sure Lily had Peanut and that he had both their boarding passes readily accessible on his phone. That's when he saw Victoria again. She was standing near the customer service desk about 50 feet away, talking rapidly to someone on her phone. Even from this distance, Marcus could see the tension in her shoulders, the way she kept glancing around as if expecting someone to appear and drag her back to wherever she'd come from. She'd pulled her hair back into a messy knot, and she'd wiped most of the makeup from her face, making her look younger, more vulnerable. As Marcus watched, she ended the call and pressed her forehead against the customer service counter, her shoulders shaking again. The agent behind the desk, a middle-aged woman with gray-streaked hair, reached across and put her hand on Victoria's arm, saying something Marcus couldn't hear. We're now boarding all passengers for Flight 2847 to Denver, the gate agent announced. All passengers, please have your boarding passes ready. Marcus picked up their backpack, took Lily's hand, started toward the gate, and stopped. Daddy. Lily looked up at him. We have to go. They're boarding. I know, baby. Just hang on a second. He didn't know what he was doing. Didn't know why he felt compelled to make sure this stranger, this woman he'd talked to for all of 10 minutes, was going to be okay. It wasn't his job to save people. He had enough trouble keeping his own life together. But he thought about Sarah in those last weeks when the cancer had made it clear it was winning. She'd made him promise things. Take care of Lily, obviously. Make sure she knows I loved her. But she'd also said, don't forget how to be kind, Marcus. Don't let this make you hard. The world needs more people who stop when someone's hurting. Daddy, Lily said again, more insistent now. Marcus made a decision that he'd probably regret. He walked over to the customer service desk, Lily trailing beside him like a confused puppy. Victoria, he said. She looked up, startled, her eyes red-rimmed but clearer than before. Marcus? I thought you'd be on your flight by now. We're about to board, Marcus said. But look, this is going to sound crazy, but do you have anywhere to go? Anyone you can stay with tonight? Victoria blinked at him. I was just trying to book a hotel room. But everything nearby is full because of some medical conference. The closest available room is 40 minutes away, and I don't have a car, and... She trailed off, looking lost. I'll figure it out. I always do. Marcus looked at the gate agent, who was now calling for rows 15 through 30 to board. He looked at Lily, who was watching him with those wise beyond her years eyes that sometimes made him feel like she was the adult and he was the child. He looked at Victoria, this stranger in a ruined dress who'd run away from a life that was probably more complicated than he could imagine. Come to Denver with us, he said. The words hung in the air between them like something fragile and impossible. Marcus couldn't quite believe he'd said them out loud. The rational part of his brain, the engineer who calculated load-bearing capacities and structural integrity for a living, was screaming that this was insane. You didn't invite strange women to fly across the country with you. You didn't complicate your already complicated life with someone else's crisis. But the part of him that had been forged in the fire of loss and single parenthood, the part that had learned to trust his instincts when everything else failed, knew he couldn't just walk away. What? Victoria stared at him as if he'd just suggested they hijack a plane. You can't. That's not, you don't even know me. I know you need help, Marcus said simply. And I know I'd want someone to help Lily if she was ever in trouble. Come with us to Denver. My in-laws have a big house. We can figure out the rest from there. Your in-laws, Victoria repeated slowly. The grandparents who cry a lot and don't talk to you? Lily giggled despite herself. She was listening, Daddy. The gate agent's voice cut through the moment. Final boarding call for Flight 2847 to Denver. All remaining passengers must board now. Marcus looked at the gate, then back at Victoria. He could see the war playing out across her face. Pride battling desperation, independence wrestling with the terrifying reality that she had nowhere else to go. He'd seen that same expression in the mirror 3 years ago, in the weeks after Sarah's funeral when he'd had to accept help from people he barely knew because the alternative was drowning. "I can't let you do this," Victoria said, but her voice wavered. "You don't understand what you'd be getting into. My life, it's complicated. There are people looking for me. My mother, my fiancé, ex-fiancé, his family. They have resources, connections. If they find out I'm with you, they might." "Might what?" Marcus challenged gently. "I'm a mechanical engineer from Houston with a 6-year-old daughter. I'm not exactly living a life of international intrigue. If some angry in-laws show up at the door, I think we can handle it." "This is insane," Victoria whispered. But she was already picking up her small purse, already taking a tentative step toward them. "Sir, if you're on this flight, you need to board now," the gate agent called out, her patience clearly wearing thin. Marcus extended his hand to Victoria. "Yes or no? Right now. We'll figure out the details on the plane." For a long moment, Victoria just stared at his hand. Then, with a shaky breath that sounded like surrender and rebellion all at once, she took it. Her palm was soft against his calloused fingers, and he could feel her trembling. "Okay," she said. "Okay. But if this turns into a disaster, then we'll deal with it," Marcus said. He turned to the gate agent, pulling out his phone. "Any chance we can add one more passenger to this flight?" 20 frantic minutes later, after Victoria had charged an eye-wateringly expensive last-minute ticket to a credit card, she pulled from her small purse and explained to the gate agent that yes, this was an emergency. No, she didn't have any luggage, and no, she wasn't trying to do anything illegal. They were finally settling into their seats. Marcus had booked coach, of course, but the flight was packed enough that they'd been separated. Marcus and Lily in row 23, Victoria in row 31. As they taxied toward the runway, Marcus found himself wondering what the hell he'd just done. He'd invited a complete stranger, a runaway bride who'd mentioned having powerful, connected people looking for her, to accompany them to his in-laws' house for the weekend. Tom and Linda were going to lose their minds. Actually, knowing Tom, he'd probably call the police. Marcus pulled out his phone and fired off a quick text to Linda. "Bringing a guest. Long story. She needed help. Please don't freak out." Linda's response came before they'd even left the ground. "Marcus Eugene Webb? What are you talking about?" His middle name. Never a good sign. He typed, "We'll explain when we land. She's a friend who was stranded. It's just for tonight." This time Linda's response took longer, and Marcus could practically see her in the Denver house, standing in the kitchen with that expression she got when she was trying very hard not to say what she was actually thinking. "Fine. But Tom is going to want details." Of course he was. The flight attendants were making their safety demonstration when Marcus felt a tiny hand tap his arm. "Daddy, why did we bring the princess lady with us?" "She's not a princess, baby," Marcus said quietly, leaning close so the other passengers wouldn't hear. "She's just someone who needed some help. Remember how Grandma and Grandpa helped us after Mommy went to heaven? How they let us stay with them for a while when everything was hard?" Lily nodded solemnly. She'd been so young when Sarah died that her memories of that time were fragmented, dreamlike. Marcus had been grateful for that mercy, even as he'd ached to give her more time with her mother. "Sometimes we help people even when we don't know them very well," Marcus continued, "because it's the right thing to do. And because someday, if we need help, maybe someone will help us too." "Like karma?" Lily asked. She'd learned the word from her teacher, Mrs. Patterson, who was very into what she called life lessons, and had a poster in her classroom that said, "What goes around comes around," in rainbow letters. "Yeah, baby, like karma." The plane lifted into the air with that peculiar sensation of defying gravity that always made Marcus's stomach drop. He looked out the window at Houston shrinking below them, The sprawling city with its tangle of highways and the humid evening air that made everything look hazy and dreamlike. Somewhere down there was his house, the three-bedroom craftsman in the Heights that he'd bought with Sarah back when they'd still been planning for a future that included multiple kids, family dinners, anniversaries that stretched into decades. Somewhere down there was his office, where his drafting table was probably still covered with the blueprints for the shopping center renovation that was supposed to be his big break, the project that would finally prove to Richard that Marcus deserved the senior engineer position. Somewhere down there was the cemetery where Sarah was buried, under the oak tree she'd chosen herself during one of their last conversations, when they'd both pretended they were just being practical instead of admitting she was dying. And somewhere down there, Marcus supposed, was the life Victoria had run away from, the wedding that wouldn't happen, the groom who was probably tearing apart Houston looking for her right now. What had he gotten himself into? The flight was smooth, which Marcus took as a minor miracle given how the day had gone. Lily occupied herself with her coloring books, creating elaborate pictures of horses and castles that she narrated in whispered detail. Marcus tried to work on his laptop, reviewing the structural calculations for the shopping center's second-floor expansion. But he kept losing focus, his mind wandering to Victoria sitting 8 rows back. About an hour into the flight, he excused himself and walked to the bathroom. On the way back, he passed Victoria's row. She was staring out the window, her face reflected in the glass, and she looked so lost that Marcus almost stopped. But he didn't know what he'd say, didn't know if she wanted company or solitude. So he just kept walking. They landed in Denver just after 9 p.m. Mountain Time. The airport was less crowded than Houston had been, and Marcus navigated them through the terminal with practiced efficiency, Lily holding his hand while yawning every 30 seconds. Victoria trailed behind them, and Marcus noticed how she kept her head down, her hair falling forward to partially obscure her face. Tom and Linda were waiting at baggage claim, and Marcus spotted them immediately. Tom with his silver hair and that rigid posture that came from 30 years in the Air Force, Linda with her cardigan pulled tight despite the reasonable temperature, her face lined with the kind of worry that had become permanent after Sarah died. "There's Grandma," Lily called out, her exhaustion momentarily forgotten as she broke into a run. Linda swept Lily into her arms with the fierce intensity of someone who'd lost one daughter and lived in constant fear of losing more. Tom's gaze, however, was locked on Marcus, and then on Victoria. "Marcus," Tom said, his voice flat. "Who's this?" Marcus took a breath. "Tom, Linda, this is Victoria. She needed help. She's going to stay with us tonight, if that's okay." "Stay with us?" Tom's eyebrows climbed toward his hairline. "Marcus, we need to talk. Privately." "I'm sorry," Victoria said quickly, her voice small. "I don't want to impose." Marcus was just being kind. "I can find a hotel." "The hotels are all booked because of the medical conference," Linda said, her nurse's practicality overriding whatever objections Tom was formulating. She studied Victoria with sharp eyes that missed nothing. The expensive dress, the bare feet, the faint traces of mascara still smudged beneath her eyes. "You look exhausted, honey. When's the last time you ate something?" Victoria blinked, as if the question had never occurred to her. "This morning? Maybe?" Linda's expression shifted into something Marcus recognized immediately. Her caretaker mode. "Tom, grab their bags when they come around. Marcus, you're driving. Victoria, you're sitting in front so you don't get carsick." She turned to Tom, her voice brooking no argument. "We'll discuss everything at home. This girl clearly needs help, and we're not going to leave her stranded in an airport." Tom opened his mouth, probably to protest, but something in Linda's expression made him close it again. After 42 years of marriage, he knew which battles to pick. The drive to Tom and Linda's house in Littleton took 35 minutes, and the silence in the car was thick enough to cut with a knife. Lily had fallen asleep in her car seat within 5 minutes, her head lolling to the side, Peanut clutched against her chest. Victoria stared out the window at the Denver suburbs rolling past, houses with manicured lawns and 2-car garages and the kind of comfortable middle-class stability that probably felt like a foreign country to her right now. Marcus kept his eyes on the road and his hands at 10 and 2, trying to think of what he'd say when Tom inevitably cornered him. "How do you explain to your skeptical father-in-law that you'd invited a runaway bride to stay with them? How do you justify a decision that, in the harsh light of hindsight, seemed increasingly reckless? The truth was, Marcus wasn't sure he could explain it, even to himself. He just knew that walking away from Victoria crying in that airport had felt wrong in a way that superseded logic or caution. Tom and Linda's house was a two-story colonial with blue shutters and a front porch where Sarah had learned to ride a bike, where she'd taken from photos, where she told her parents she had cancer. Marcus had been here dozens of times over the years, first as Sarah's boyfriend, then her fiancé, then her husband, and finally as her widower. The house held so many memories that sometimes walking through the door felt like stepping into a museum of his own life. Linda had the guest room ready within minutes, moving with the efficient grace of someone who'd spent decades making people comfortable. "The bathroom is just down the hall," she told Victoria, handing her a stack of clean towels. "I'll find you something to sleep in, you're about Sarah's size." Her voice caught slightly on her daughter's name, but she pushed through. "There's toothpaste in the cabinet, and if you need anything else, just ask." "Thank you," Victoria said, and Marcus could hear genuine gratitude in her voice. "You don't know how much this means. I'll be out of your way tomorrow, I promise." "We'll talk about it in the morning," Linda said firmly. "Right now you need rest, and probably food. Are you hungry?" "I don't want to be any trouble." "It's leftover lasagna or scrambled eggs," Linda interrupted. "Pick one." "Lasagna sounds amazing," Victoria admitted, while Linda heated up food in the kitchen and Tom took a still-sleeping Lily upstairs to her usual room, Sarah's childhood bedroom, now redecorated in purple and yellow. Marcus found himself standing in the living room, staring at the family photos that lined the mantel. Sarah at 8, missing her front teeth. Sarah at 16, dressed for homecoming. Sarah at 25, on their wedding day, looking at Marcus like he hung the moon. "You want to tell me what's going on?" Tom's voice came from behind him, quiet but edged with something harder. Marcus turned. Tom stood in the doorway, arms crossed, every inch the disapproving father-in-law. "It's complicated. Try me. I found her at the airport. She was upset. I helped her. That's it." "That's not it," Tom said. "You don't just invite strange women to fly across the country with you and my granddaughter. You're smarter than that, Marcus. So what's really going on?" Marcus felt his jaw tighten. "What's going on is that I saw someone who needed help, and I helped them. The same way you and Linda helped me when Sarah died. The same way dozens of people helped us when we were drowning. I'm just paying it forward." "Paying it forward," Tom repeated, his voice dripping with skepticism. "Do you know anything about this woman? Her background? Whether she's running from the law? Whether she's dangerous?" "She's not dangerous. She's scared. There's a difference." "Marcus, look, I know you don't think much of my judgment," Marcus said, the words coming out sharper than he intended. "I know you think I'm barely managing to keep it together, that I should move back to Denver so you and Linda can help raise Lily properly. But I'm doing the best I can, Tom. And part of that is teaching my daughter that when you see someone hurting, you don't just walk away. You stop. You help. Even if it's inconvenient. Even if it's complicated." Tom's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. "I never said you weren't doing your best. You didn't have to say it." They stood there in the living room, surrounded by photos of Sarah, the ghost of her presence so strong Marcus could almost smell her perfume, that vanilla and jasmine scent she'd worn since high school. The grandfather clock in the corner ticked loudly, marking the seconds of this standoff that felt like it had been building for 3 years. "I worry about you," Tom finally said, his voice gruff. "Both of you. You're all I have left of Sarah. If something happened, if you made a mistake that put you or Lily in danger, I couldn't." He trailed off, looking away. Marcus felt his anger deflate. It was easy to forget sometimes that Tom had lost his daughter, that his overprotectiveness came from a place of profound grief, not malice. "Nothing's going to happen," Marcus said quietly. "Victoria just needs a safe place to figure things out. We'll help her get back on her feet, and then she'll go wherever she needs to go. Just one weekend, Tom. That's all." Tom studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "One weekend. But if anything seems off, if she's trouble, she's gone. Understood. Understood. They found Victoria in the kitchen, sitting at the breakfast bar while Linda bustled around heating up lasagna and making tea. Victoria had washed her face, and without the makeup, she looked younger, almost vulnerable. The fancy dress looked even more incongruous now, like a costume she couldn't quite remove. "Linda's been telling me about Sarah," Victoria said as Marcus entered. There was something gentle in her voice, an unexpected tenderness. "She sounds like she was an incredible person." "She was," Marcus said simply, because what else could you say? They ate together at the kitchen table, Victoria devouring the lasagna like someone who hadn't realized how hungry she was, Marcus picking at his food while exhaustion crept through his bones, Linda fussing over both of them with the determined energy of someone who dealt with grief by taking care of others. Tom sat at the head of the table, silent but watchful, his eyes moving between Marcus and Victoria like he was trying to solve an equation that didn't quite add up. "So," Linda said, pouring Victoria more tea, "do you have family we should call? Someone who'll be worried about you." Victoria's hand trembled slightly as she set down her fork. "My mother knows I'm safe. I called her from the airport. She's not happy, but she knows I'm okay." "And the wedding?" Linda asked gently. "The young man you were supposed to marry?" "His name is Preston," Victoria said, and just saying the name seemed to cost her something. "Preston Ashford Whitmore III. His family owns half of Atlanta's commercial real estate." "My family." She stopped, seeming to weigh how much to reveal. "Let's just say our families have known each other for a very long time. The wedding was supposed to be a merger as much as a marriage." Tom's eyebrows rose. "A merger? My father died 2 years ago," Victoria said quietly. "He built a company from nothing, technology, software development, some hardware manufacturing. When he died, he left it to me. All of it. But I was 26 and grieving and didn't know the first thing about running a corporation. Preston's father, Douglas, offered to help. He said Preston and I would make a good match, that combining our resources would be smart business." "And you agreed?" Linda asked, not judgmentally, just curious. "I was tired," Victoria said simply. "Tired of fighting, tired of decisions, tired of everyone looking at me like I was going to destroy everything my father built. Preston was nice enough, handsome, well-educated. Everyone said we were perfect together. And I thought maybe they're right. Maybe this is what grown-up life looks like. Compromise and strategy and doing what makes sense instead of what makes you happy." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "It took me until yesterday to realize that nice enough isn't the same as love. That I was about to promise forever to someone I couldn't even have a real conversation with. Someone who looks at me and sees my father's company, not me." Marcus thought about Sarah, about how she'd made him laugh even when he was stressed about work, how she'd understood him in ways he hadn't understood himself, how she'd known he needed silence after a hard day and conversation after a good one, how loving her had felt like the easiest and hardest thing he'd ever done. "You made the right choice," he said. Victoria looked at him, really looked at him, and he saw something shift in her expression. Surprise, maybe, that someone believed her without question. "You don't even know me. I know you couldn't stand up in front of 300 people and lie," Marcus said. "That counts for something." They finished eating in a more comfortable silence, and Linda showed Victoria upstairs to the guest room. Marcus checked on Lily, who was sprawled across Sarah's old bed in a tangle of princess blankets, Peanut tucked under one arm. He kissed her forehead, breathing in that little kid smell of strawberry shampoo and innocence, and felt the familiar ache of knowing he was doing this alone. He was pulling her door closed when he heard Victoria's voice from down the hall. "She's lucky to have you." Marcus turned. Victoria stood in the doorway of the guest room, wearing one of Sarah's old college sweatshirts and a pair of pajama pants that Linda must have found. Her hair was damp from the shower, and she looked more like a regular person now, less like the glossy society woman from the airport. "I'm lucky to have her," Marcus said. "She's the reason I get up in the morning." Victoria leaned against the doorframe. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure. Why did you help me?" Really? You could have just walked past. Most people would have. Marcus thought about it, about how to explain something he didn't fully understand himself. 3 years ago, when Sarah died, I didn't think I was going to make it, he said quietly. Not literally, I wasn't suicidal or anything, but I didn't know how to be a single parent. I didn't know how to exist in a world where she wasn't there. And people helped me. Neighbors brought casseroles. Sarah's friends set up a meal train. My boss gave me flexible hours. Complete strangers at Lily's school offered to carpool, so I wouldn't have to leave work early every day. He paused, remembering those early months when every day had felt like swimming through concrete. I learned that sometimes survival isn't about being strong. It's about letting people help you when you're weak. So when I saw you crying in that airport, I thought, maybe I can be one of those people for someone else. Maybe that's how this works. Victoria's eyes were bright with unshed tears. Your wife must have been extraordinary if she inspired this much goodness in you. She was, Marcus said. But the goodness was already there. She just helped me see it. Victoria nodded slowly. Thank you, Marcus, for everything. I'll be gone tomorrow, I promise. I'll figure out where I'm going and... Don't worry about tomorrow yet, Marcus said. Just sleep. Everything else can wait. He lay awake for a long time that night in the basement guest room that had become his usual spot when they visited. The room still smelled faintly of Tom's woodworking projects, all sawdust and varnish. Above him, the house creaked and settled, old bones adjusting to the cold night air that swept down from the mountains. Marcus thought about the shopping center project waiting for him back in Houston. He thought about Lily starting first grade in a few weeks and whether he'd remembered to order her school supplies. He thought about the brake noise his car had been making that he really needed to get checked out. He thought about the mortgage payment due next week and the medical bills that still trickled in even 3 years after Sarah's death. Remnants of a healthcare system that treated cancer like a luxury expense. And he thought about Victoria, sleeping one floor above him in Sarah's old sweatshirt, running from a life that probably looked perfect from the outside. Money didn't protect you from heartbreak, he supposed. Didn't keep you from making choices that felt like drowning. Sleep finally took him sometime after midnight, and his dreams were confused tangles of airports and wedding dresses and Sarah's laugh echoing through empty terminals. The next morning arrived with aggressive Colorado sunshine streaming through the basement window. Marcus woke to the sound of Lily's feet thundering down the stairs. Daddy, Daddy, wake up. The princess lady is making pancakes, and she can flip them in the air and Grandma is laughing and everything smells so good. Marcus dragged himself upright, his back protesting from the basement couch that was somehow less comfortable than he remembered. He checked his phone. 8:47 a.m. and 3 missed calls from Richard Chun, his boss, on a Saturday morning. That couldn't be good. He pulled on jeans and yesterday's shirt and followed Lily upstairs, where he found a scene that seemed to come from an alternate dimension. Victoria stood at the stove, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, still wearing Sarah's old clothes, expertly flipping pancakes with the confidence of someone who'd spent time in professional kitchens. Linda sat at the breakfast bar actually smiling, something she rarely did these days, while sharing some story about Sarah's disastrous attempt to make pancakes when she was 12. The smoke alarm went off 3 times. Linda was saying, laughing, and the fire department showed up because the neighbor thought the house was burning down. Sarah was absolutely mortified. My father tried to teach me to cook when I was young, Victoria said, catching a pancake on the spatula with casual grace. He said that knowing how to feed yourself was the most important kind of independence, that you could lose everything else, but if you could cook, you'd never starve. Her voice went soft. He was right about that. She looked up and saw Marcus standing in the doorway. Good morning. I hope you don't mind. I couldn't sleep, and I figured the least I could do was make breakfast. I don't mind at all, Marcus said, trying to process this domestic scene that felt both comforting and deeply strange. Tom appeared from the garage, carrying his Saturday newspaper and wearing his reading glasses. He looked at Victoria, at the pancakes, at his wife's genuine smile, and something in his perpetually stern expression softened microscopically. Those smell good, he admitted grudgingly. Blueberry, Victoria said. Linda said they were Sarah's favorite. They ate together at the dining room table, and it was the most normal breakfast Marcus had experienced in this house since Sarah died. Usually meals here were tense affairs, with Tom asking pointed questions about Lily's schooling and Linda trying too hard to fill the silences with cheerful chatter. But with Victoria there, the dynamic shifted. She asked Tom about his woodworking, seemed genuinely interested in his explanation of different wood grains. She talked to Linda about nursing, revealing that she'd originally wanted to study medicine before her father's illness had pulled her into the family business. She made Lily laugh by teaching her a silly song about a dancing bear that apparently involved complex hand motions. And Marcus found himself watching her with growing curiosity. This wasn't the broken woman from the airport. This was someone comfortable in her own skin, warm and funny and real in a way that seemed at odds with the society wedding she'd fled. Who was Victoria, really? His phone buzzed in his pocket. Richard Chin calling again. Marcus excused himself and stepped into the backyard, where Tom's garden grew in neat, obsessive rows. Richard, hey. Sorry I missed your calls. Marcus, we have a problem. Richard's voice was tight with stress. The Riverside project. The structural engineer they hired to review our plans found an issue with the second-floor load calculations. They're saying our numbers don't account for the HVAC equipment weight. They're threatening to pull the contract. Marcus's stomach dropped. The Riverside Shopping Center renovation was his project. His calculations. His responsibility. That's not possible. I triple-checked those numbers. The HVAC specs were included in the load analysis. They're saying they provided updated HVAC specs 2 weeks ago, and we didn't incorporate them. What updated specs? I never received. Marcus stopped, a sick realization creeping over him. 2 weeks ago, he'd been drowning in deadlines, working late every night after putting Lily to bed. He'd been so focused on finishing the initial drawings that he might have missed an email, might have overlooked something critical. I need you back here, Richard said. Today. We have to recalculate everything and submit revised plans by Monday or we lose the contract. And if we lose this contract, Marcus. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. If they lost the contract, the firm would lose its biggest client. Richard would lose his credibility. And Marcus would lose his job. I'm in Denver with Lily, Marcus said. I can't just. Then work remotely. I'm sending you all the files. Get the calculations done by tomorrow night. This is not optional, Marcus. This is your project. If it fails, it's on you. The call ended. Marcus stood in Tom's garden, staring at his phone, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on his shoulders. He had approximately 36 hours to redo complex structural calculations that had taken him weeks to complete the first time. He had a daughter to care for, in-laws who were already skeptical of his life choices, and now, apparently, a house guest who'd fled from a wedding and might have powerful people looking for her. Everything okay? Victoria's voice came from the back door. Marcus turned. She stood on the porch, holding a cup of coffee, her expression concerned. Work emergency, he said, trying to keep his voice level. I have to redo a major project by tomorrow night or I'll probably lose my job. Victoria's eyes widened. God, Marcus, I'm so sorry. You should have said something. I'm just making everything more complicated. You're not, Marcus said, surprising himself with how much he meant it. This isn't your fault. This is my screw-up from 2 weeks ago catching up to me. Can I help? Unless you're secretly a structural engineer, probably not. I'm not, Victoria admitted. But I can entertain Lily. Keep her occupied while you work. It's the least I can do after you've been so kind. Marcus looked at this woman he'd known for less than 24 hours. This stranger who was offering to help him the same way he'd helped her. And he realized that sometimes the universe works in strange circles, that maybe karma wasn't just a poster in a first-grade classroom. Actually, he said, that would be incredibly helpful. They spent the rest of Saturday in a strange but functional routine. Marcus set up his laptop at the dining room table, surrounded by blueprints and building codes and increasingly cold cups of coffee. Victoria took Lily to the park, then to get ice cream, then back to the house to build an elaborate blanket fort in the living room. Linda hovered, occasionally bringing Marcus sandwiches he barely tasted, her nurse's instinct recognizing when someone was running on fumes. Tom remained skeptical but distant, working in his garage on what looked like a chess table, emerging periodically to check that this strange woman wasn't doing anything suspicious with his granddaughter. The work was brutal. The updated HVAC specifications were indeed significantly different, heavier equipment, different mounting requirements. Marcus had to recalculate load distributions, adjust beam sizes, verify that the existing structure could handle the additional weight without requiring costly reinforcement. It was like solving a three-dimensional puzzle where every piece affected every other piece, and getting it wrong could mean the building collapsing someday. He worked through lunch, through dinner, through the evening while Lily and Victoria watched a movie about singing animated animals. His eyes burned from staring at the screen. His shoulders ached from hunching over the keyboard. But slowly, methodically, he rebuilt the calculations. Around 10 p.m., Victoria brought him another cup of coffee. "Lily's asleep," she said quietly. She insisted I read her 3 books about dragons. "She's amazing, Marcus. You're raising an incredible kid." "Thanks," Marcus said, rubbing his eyes. "She's the best part of my life." Victoria sat down across from him, studying the blueprints spread across the table. "Can I ask what you're working on?" Marcus explained the project, a mid-century shopping center being renovated into a mixed-use space with retail on the first floor and office space on the second. He showed her the load calculations, the structural concerns, the complexity of retrofitting an old building to meet modern codes. Victoria listened with genuine interest, asking intelligent questions that suggested she understood more about engineering than he'd expected. "My father's company did a lot of manufacturing," she explained. "I picked up some things about structural integrity and load-bearing. Nothing like what you're doing, but enough to follow along." They talked for a while, and Marcus found himself relaxing despite the deadline pressure. Victoria had a way of listening that made him feel heard, understood. She didn't try to fix his problems or offer empty reassurances. She just sat there, present and attentive, occasionally refilling his coffee. "Can I tell you something?" Victoria said eventually. "Something I haven't told anyone else?" "Sure. I don't miss him," she said quietly. "Preston. I keep waiting to feel regret or doubt or even just sadness about what I walked away from. But I don't. All I feel is relief. And that scares me because it means I almost made a catastrophic mistake. I almost married someone I don't even miss when he's gone." Marcus looked at her across the table, this woman who'd run from a wedding in a city hundreds of miles away. "That's not scary," he said. "That's clarity. Most people never get that kind of clarity. They just drift through life making choices that look right from the outside, wondering why they're not happy." "Is that what you had with Sarah?" Victoria asked. "Clarity. Yes," Marcus said without hesitation. "From the first time I met her, I knew. Sounds ridiculous. Love at first sight, all that romantic comedy nonsense. But it was true for us. We met at a coffee shop. She spilled her latte all over my engineering textbook. And when she looked up at me, apologizing with this mortified expression, I just thought, this is it. This is my person." His voice caught slightly. "We had 9 years together. Got married, bought a house, had Lily. And then cancer came and took her in 6 months. It wasn't fair and it wasn't right, and I'm still angry about it most days. But I'd rather have had 9 years of clarity than a lifetime of settling." Victoria reached across the table and squeezed his hand briefly. "Sarah was lucky to have you. I was the lucky one." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the house quiet around them except for the grandfather clock ticking in the corner and the faint hum of Tom's television upstairs. "I should let you work," Victoria said, standing. "But Marcus? Thank you. For everything. For helping me, for not judging me, for seeing me. Not my father's company or my mother's expectations or Preston's convenient bride. Just me. That's the only version worth seeing," Marcus said. After she went upstairs, Marcus returned to his calculations with renewed focus. He worked until 3 a.m., checking and rechecking every number, every beam size, every load distribution. When he finally sent the revised plans to Richard with a detailed explanation of all the changes, the sun was beginning to lighten the eastern sky. He crawled onto the basement couch and was asleep within seconds. Marcus woke to his phone ringing at 9:23 a.m. Sunday morning. His head felt like it had been stuffed with cotton. His mouth tasted like old coffee and regret, and every muscle in his body protested as he reached for the phone. Unknown number. Houston area code. Hello. His voice came out as a croak. Is this Marcus Webb? A woman's voice, sharp and cultured with a distinct southern accent. Yes. Who's calling? My name is Catherine Montgomery. I'm looking for my daughter, Victoria. I have reason to believe she may be with you. Marcus sat up, suddenly very awake. I'm sorry, who? Don't play games with me, Mr. Webb. My daughter used her credit card last night to purchase a plane ticket from Houston to Denver. The gate agent remembers her boarding with a man and a small child matching your description. I've spent the last 12 hours tracking down every Webb in the Houston area until I found the right one. Now, where's my daughter? Marcus's mind raced. How the hell had Victoria's mother found him? And more importantly, what was he supposed to say? Victoria had made it clear she didn't want to go back. That she'd called her mother to say she was safe but nothing more. Mrs. Montgomery. Ms. Montgomery. I kept my maiden name. Ms. Montgomery. If Victoria wanted you to know where she was, she'd tell you herself. There was a long, dangerous silence on the other end of the line. When Catherine spoke again, her voice had gone cold enough to frost glass. Mr. Webb, I don't know what my daughter has told you, but you were making a serious mistake by interfering in our family matters. Victoria is not well. She's been under tremendous stress, and she's made some very poor decisions that she'll regret when she's thinking clearly. The kindest thing you can do is tell me where she is, so I can bring her home and get her the help she needs. The help she needs, Marcus repeated slowly. You mean convince her to go through with the wedding she doesn't want? I mean help her see reason, Catherine snapped. She's throwing away her future, her father's legacy, everything we've built. And for what? Some childish fantasy about love and happiness? Life isn't a fairy tale, Mr. Webb. Sometimes we have to make difficult choices for the greater good. Marcus thought about Sarah, about how she'd faced her own death with courage and grace, about how she'd never complained, never raged against the unfairness of it all, even though she'd had every right to, about how her last words to him had been, "Make sure Lily knows she gets to choose her own life. Don't let anyone tell her who she has to be." Victoria is an adult, Marcus said carefully. She can make her own choices. And if she's chosen not to tell you where she is, I'm going to respect that. You have no idea what you're getting involved in, Catherine said, her voice dropping to something that sounded almost like a threat. The Whitmore family is not accustomed to being embarrassed. Preston's father has already made calls. They're looking for Victoria. And when they find her, and they will find her, there will be consequences for everyone involved. Is that a threat? It's a reality check. You're a single father with a young daughter, Mr. Webb. I'm sure you work hard to provide for her. It would be unfortunate if your current employment situation became complicated. Marcus felt anger flash hot and bright in his chest. Are you threatening my job? I'm simply pointing out that actions have consequences, Catherine said smoothly. Douglas Whitmore owns half of Atlanta's commercial real estate, but his reach extends far beyond Georgia. He has business partners in every major city in America, including Houston, including, I imagine, companies that might employ structural engineers. This conversation is over, Marcus said. Mr. Webb. He hung up. His hands were shaking. The rational part of his brain, the part that had learned to be cautious after Sarah's death, that prioritized Lily's stability above everything else, was screaming that he'd just made a terrible mistake, that he should have been diplomatic, should have found some middle ground that wouldn't make enemies of people who apparently had the power and connections to destroy his career. But the rest of him, the part that had held Sarah's hand while she died and promised to live the kind of life that would make her proud, knew he'd done the right thing. He dragged himself upstairs to find the house already awake and bustling. Tom was reading the newspaper at the kitchen table with that focused intensity he brought to everything. Linda was making what smelled like her famous cinnamon rolls, and Victoria sat on the living room floor with Lily, building an elaborate castle out of blocks, while discussing the architectural integrity of various tower designs. The round towers are stronger, Victoria was explaining, because the force gets distributed evenly around the circle. Square towers have corners, and corners are weak points. Like the building Daddy's working on? Lily asked. Exactly like that. Your daddy has to think about all these things. Where the weight goes, which parts need to be stronger, how everything connects together. Marcus watched them for a moment. This scene of easy companionship that felt both natural and impossibly complicated. Then Victoria looked up and saw his expression. What's wrong? She asked immediately. Can we talk? Privately? They ended up in Tom's garage, surrounded by half-finished woodworking projects and the smell of sawdust. Marcus told her about the phone call, about Catherine's threats, about the apparent reach of the Whitmore family's influence. Victoria's face had gone pale. Oh God, Marcus. I'm so sorry. I should have known she'd track my credit card. I should have thought, I'm putting you in danger. I'm putting Lily in danger. You're not putting anyone in danger, Marcus said firmly. Your mother is trying to scare me into giving you up. That's all. Empty threats to make me cooperate. They're not empty, Victoria said, her voice small. You don't understand. Douglas Whitmore he's powerful, Marcus. He doesn't just own real estate. He sits on boards. He plays golf with senators. When I say he has reach, I mean he has the kind of reach that can destroy careers with a phone call. Then let him try, Marcus said, surprising himself with the conviction in his voice. I'm not handing you over like some kind of possession they misplaced. Victoria stared at him. Why are you doing this? You barely know me. You have Lily to think about. Your career. Why are you willing to risk any of that for someone you met 2 days ago? Marcus thought about it, about how to explain a decision that felt both completely insane and absolutely necessary. Because 3 years ago, I stood in a hospital room and watched my wife die, he said quietly. And one of the last things she made me promise was that I'd teach Lily to stand up for what's right, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. How can I teach her that if I'm not willing to do it myself? Tears spilled down Victoria's cheeks. You're a good person, Marcus Webb. I'm just a person, Marcus corrected, trying to do the next right thing. They returned to the house to find Tom waiting in the kitchen, his arms crossed, his expression grim. I heard the phone ring early. Who was it? Marcus and Victoria exchanged glances. There was no point in lying. Tom had probably been eavesdropping anyway. Victoria's mother, Marcus said. She tracked Victoria's credit card, found out she flew to Denver with me. She wants Victoria to come home. And you said no, Tom said. It wasn't a question. I said it was Victoria's choice. Tom was quiet for a long moment, his jaw working like he was chewing over something tough and unpleasant. Finally, he looked at Victoria. Is your family dangerous? Not physically, Victoria said, but they're rich and connected, and they're used to getting what they want. My mother made some threats about Marcus's job, about making his life difficult. Over a wedding? Tom's eyebrows climbed. What kind of people threaten a man's livelihood over a canceled wedding? The kind who see their children as assets instead of people, Victoria said bitterly. Tom turned to Marcus. You're sure about this? About getting involved in whatever this is? No, Marcus admitted. I'm not sure about anything except that Victoria needed help and I was in a position to give it. The rest, we'll figure it out. Something shifted in Tom's expression then, some calculus that Marcus couldn't quite read. Well, Tom said gruffly, if anyone comes looking for her here, they'll find out that military training doesn't disappear just because you retire. Nobody threatens my family. Linda appeared from the hallway, clearly having heard the whole conversation. Victoria, honey, are you safe? Physically, I mean, these people aren't going to hurt you. No, Victoria said. They'll try to manipulate me, guilt me, maybe threaten financial consequences. But they won't hurt me. That would be too scandalous. Financial consequences, Linda repeated. She looked at Marcus. Can you afford to lose your job right now? It was a brutal question, asked with a nurse's directness. Marcus appreciated the honesty even as he hated admitting the truth. No, not really. I'm still paying off Sarah's medical bills. The mortgage is tight. If I lost my job, I'd have maybe 3 months before things got really bad. Then we need a plan, Tom said, slipping into military mode. First priority, secure the perimeter. Anyone asks, Victoria isn't here. We don't know her. Never heard of her. Marcus, you came to visit with Lily like always. That's the story. Second priority, Linda added. Victoria needs to figure out her next move. You can't hide here forever, honey. Eventually, you'll have to decide what you want and start building toward it. Victoria nodded, looking overwhelmed but determined. I know. I need a few days. To think. To plan. To figure out how to untangle my life from Preston's, from my mother's expectations, from the company. The rest of Sunday passed in a strange state of controlled tension. Marcus finalized his revisions to the Riverside project and submitted everything to Richard, who sent back a curt received. We'll review. That didn't bode well. Lily seemed oblivious to the underlying stress, spending the day playing with Victoria and teaching her elaborate games that involved stuffed animals having dramatic adventures. Tom kept watching the street through the front windows, as if expecting an invasion force of angry in-laws to appear at any moment. And Marcus tried not to think about what he'd gotten himself into, about how quickly his simple act of kindness had escalated into something far more complicated. That evening, after Lily was in bed, Victoria found Marcus on the back porch. He was staring up at the stars, which were visible here in ways they never were in Houston's light pollution. The Colorado night air was cool and crisp, carrying the scent of pine from the mountains. I've been thinking about what Linda said, Victoria began, sitting down beside him on the porch steps, about figuring out what I want. And I think I know. Yeah, I want out, she said simply. Out of the company, out of my mother's control, out of the life I've been living because it's what everyone expected. I want to sell my stake in Montgomery Tech, take whatever money is legally mine, and disappear. Start over somewhere new. Figure out who Victoria Montgomery actually is when she's not performing for everyone else. That's a big decision. I know. And it'll be messy. There will be lawyers and negotiations and probably some very ugly conversations. But I can't keep living the way I was. I'd rather be poor and free than rich and trapped. Marcus thought about his own life after Sarah died, about how he'd had to rebuild everything from scratch. Freedom is worth more than you think, he said. But starting over, it's hard, Victoria. Really hard. Are you sure you're ready for that? No, she admitted. But I don't think you can ever be ready for major life changes. You just have to jump and figure out the flying part on the way down. They sat in silence for a while, watching the stars will overhead. Then Victoria said, Can I ask you something? Sure. What would you have done differently if you could go back to before Sarah got sick? Would you change anything? Marcus considered the question. I'd have taken more time off work, he said slowly. I was always chasing the next project, the next promotion, thinking I had all the time in the world. I'd have taken her on more dates, told her I loved her more often. I'd have been more present instead of always worrying about the future. He paused. But the thing is, I don't know if I would have actually done any of that unless I knew what was coming. We never think we're running out of time until we're already out. That's the tragedy of being human. We don't know which moments are the important ones until they're gone. That's both depressing and beautiful, Victoria said. Yeah, well, welcome to grief. It's complicated. Victoria leaned her head on his shoulder, a gesture that felt natural despite how little time they'd known each other. Thank you for this, for all of it, for not being one of those people who just walks past. You're welcome, Marcus said. They stayed like that for a long time, two people who'd been strangers 3 days ago, watching the Colorado night sky and trying to figure out what came next. Monday morning arrived with an urgency that couldn't be ignored. They had to fly back to Houston. Marcus had work, Lily had school, and real life was calling them home. But the question of what to do about Victoria loomed large and complicated. "She can come back to Houston with us?" Marcus said at breakfast, the words tumbling out before he'd fully thought them through. "Just temporarily, until she figures out her next move. I have a guest room. It's not fancy, but it's available." Tom and Linda exchanged one of those married couple looks that communicated entire conversations in a single glance. "Marcus," Linda said carefully, "are you sure that's wise? Having a house guest when you're already stretched thin?" "I'll figure it out," Marcus said, with more confidence than he felt. Tom leaned back in his chair, studying Marcus with those sharp eyes that had evaluated countless military recruits over the years. "This isn't just charity, is it? What do you mean?" "I mean you like her," Tom said bluntly. "Victoria. You like her." Marcus felt heat creep up his neck. "I'm helping her. That's all." "Aha," Tom said, unconvinced. "Just remember, she's running from a complicated situation. The last thing either of you needs is to make it more complicated by getting involved romantically." That's not," Marcus stuttered. Victoria appeared in the doorway, still wearing Sarah's borrowed clothes, her hair wet from the shower. "Marcus is right," she said firmly. "We're not involved. He's just being kind. And I would be incredibly grateful for a place to stay while I sort out the legal issues. I promise I won't be a burden. I can cook, clean, help with Lily, whatever you need." "You don't have to earn your keep," Marcus said. "You're a guest, not an employee." "I need to feel useful," Victoria said quietly. "Please, let me help." They flew back to Houston that afternoon. The flight was uneventful, though Marcus noticed Victoria watching the other passengers with a wariness that hadn't been there before, as if expecting her mother or Preston to materialize at any moment. Lily chattered happily about everything she'd done with Victoria over the weekend, blissfully unaware of the undercurrents swirling around them. Marcus's house in the Heights was exactly as he'd left it. A 3-bedroom craftsman with hardwood floors that needed refinishing, a kitchen that was functional but dated, and a backyard where Lily's swing set rusted slowly under the brutal Texas sun. It wasn't much, especially compared to whatever Victoria was used to, but it was home. "It's perfect," Victoria said, standing in the modest living room with its mismatched furniture and Lily's artwork covering the walls. "It feels like a place where people actually live, as opposed to my mother's house, which looks like a museum, or Preston's penthouse, which was all glass and steel and so minimalist you were afraid to touch anything." She turned to him with a smile. "This feels like a home." Marcus showed her to the guest room, Sarah's old office, which he'd converted after her death because he couldn't stand to see it empty. It had a daybed, a dresser, and a window that looked out onto the street. Basic, simple, a far cry from what Victoria was probably accustomed to. "I'll need to go shopping tomorrow," Victoria said, assessing the room. "I literally have nothing. No clothes, no toiletries, nothing except what I'm wearing. Can I borrow some money? I'll pay you back once I can access my accounts without my mother tracking everything." "We'll figure it out," Marcus said. "There's a Target nearby. Tomorrow after I drop Lily at school." That night, Marcus lay awake in his own bed for the first time in days, listening to the familiar sounds of his house settling. Down the hall, Victoria was presumably sleeping in Sarah's old office. In the room next door, Lily snored softly, Peanut clutched to her chest. His phone buzzed with an email from Richard. "Calculations look good. Resubmitting to client tomorrow. We'll see if this saves the contract. Good work under pressure." Marcus exhaled relief. His job was safe, for now. But as he drifted towards sleep, he couldn't stop thinking about Tom's words. "You like her, did he?" Victoria was beautiful, yes, and kind and funny and brave in ways that surprised him. But it had only been 3 days. 3 chaotic, impossible days. You couldn't develop real feelings for someone in that short a time. Could you? Over the next 2 weeks, a routine emerged that felt both temporary and strangely permanent. Marcus went to work. Lily went to school. And Victoria transformed his house into something that felt more alive than it had in 3 years. She cooked elaborate dinners that made Lily squeal with delight. She organized his disaster of a garage. She helped Lily with homework and taught her songs in French that Victoria had learned from her father. She was just there, present and helpful and increasingly essential to their daily rhythm. And Marcus found himself looking forward to coming home in ways he hadn't since Sarah died. They talked late into the night after Lily went to bed, sharing stories about their lives. Victoria told him about her father, about building forts in his office while he worked, about how he taught her to see beauty in equations and logic. Marcus told her about meeting Sarah, about their imperfect but real marriage, about learning to be both mother and father to a daughter who deserved both. Victoria hired a lawyer, a fierce woman named Patricia Gonzalez who specialized in disentangling complicated family businesses. The process of separating from Montgomery Tech would take months, maybe years, but Patricia was confident they could get Victoria out with enough money to start fresh. Catherine called repeatedly. Preston showed up once, actually finding Marcus's address somehow, but Tom had prepared Marcus for this possibility. Marcus told Preston calmly that Victoria didn't want to see him, that she was safe and making her own choices, and that he needed to respect that. Preston had left, angry but ultimately unwilling to make a scene in a neighborhood where people were watching from their porches. And slowly, quietly, Marcus and Victoria began to fall in love. It wasn't dramatic. There was no lightning bolt moment, no grand romantic gesture. It was Victoria laughing at his terrible jokes while they washed dishes. It was Marcus watching her braid Lily's hair with patient tenderness. It was the way they'd started sitting closer on the couch during their late-night talks, the way their hands would brush and neither would pull away. It was the morning Marcus came downstairs to find Victoria making his coffee exactly the way he liked it without having to ask how. It was Victoria crying in the bathroom after a brutal phone call with her mother, and Marcus holding her without trying to fix anything, just being present. It was Lily asking, "Daddy, is Victoria going to stay forever?" with such hope in her voice that Marcus's heart ached. 1 month after the airport, Marcus came home from work to find Victoria in the backyard, pushing Lily on the swing. The late October light turned everything golden, and Victoria's laugh, free and genuine, carried across the yard. She'd cut her hair shorter, traded the fancy dress for jeans and one of his old t-shirts. She looked nothing like the broken woman from the airport. She looked like she belonged. Marcus walked over, and Lily jumped off the swing mid-arc, running to him with her usual enthusiasm. "Daddy," Victoria said, "we can make cookies. The chocolate chip ones." "Then we better make cookies," Marcus agreed. After Lily ran inside, Victoria stayed on the swing, kicking her feet gently. "I got word from Patricia today," she said. "The separation agreement is moving forward. My mother's fighting it, but Patricia thinks we'll win. I might actually be free." "That's amazing," Marcus said. "It is." Victoria paused. "But it also means I'll have money soon. Enough to get my own place, start my own life. I won't need to stay here anymore." Marcus's chest tightened. He'd known this was temporary, had known from the beginning that Victoria was healing, getting stronger, preparing to move on. But somewhere along the way, temporary had started to feel permanent. "Or," Victoria said quietly, looking up at him with those gray-green eyes that had haunted him since the airport, "I could stay. If you wanted. Not as a guest. As something more." "Victoria, I'm in love with you, Marcus," she said, the words tumbling out in a rush. "I know it's fast and probably crazy and maybe it's just gratitude or trauma bonding or whatever my therapist would say. But I don't think so. I think I'm in love with you because you're kind and real and you see me. Not my father's company or my mother's expectations. Just me. And I've never had that before." Marcus knelt in front of the swing, taking her hands in his. "I'm in love with you too," he said. "I have been for weeks. I was just too scared to say it." "Scared of what?" "Of being happy again," Marcus admitted. "Of letting someone in. Of betraying Sarah's memory by moving forward." "Do you think she'd want you to be alone forever?" Victoria asked gently. Marcus thought about Sarah's last words. "Don't forget how to be kind. Don't let this make you hard." No, he said. She'd want me to be happy. She'd want Lily to see what love looks like. She'd want... His voice broke. She'd want exactly this. Victoria slid off the swing and into his arms, and they stayed there in the golden October light, two broken people who'd found each other in an airport and somehow built something real from the wreckage of their old lives. Inside, Lily called out, "Are we making cookies or not?" Marcus and Victoria looked at each other and laughed. "We're coming, baby," Marcus called back. "We're coming." They walked toward the house hand in hand, toward the daughter waiting inside, toward the future that had seemed impossible just 1 month ago. Sometimes, Marcus thought, the best things in life start with a stranger crying in an airport and a decision to stop instead of walking past. Sometimes, the best things start with simply being kind. Thank you for listening to the story of Marcus, Victoria, and little Lily. A tale of unexpected connections, second chances, and the courage to choose kindness even when it's complicated. If you enjoyed this journey from a chance encounter in an airport to a new beginning in Houston, please subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming stories about real people facing real challenges and finding hope in unexpected places.